Hi, I'm Dietrich.
I'm Alex.
And I'm Ben.
We're from the podcast That Song From That Movie, the journey through the very best and worst of movie songs.
We want you to join us on our voyage across the cinematic sound waves as we take a deep dive on a new song and movie each week to figure out just what makes them tick.
Already we've set sail with Celine Dion on the Titanic, found a friend in Toy Story, and gotten drenched out in the rain with Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Hopefully each breakdown allows us to answer the ultimate question of what's better, the movie or the song. Or at least learn something new along the way.
Just like learning that Toy Story 4 is a meaningless cash grab without a soul.
You can subscribe right now on all good podcast platforms. If you use one of the bad ones, then that's on you, and we can't be held responsible.
Subscribe to That Song From That Movie.
What is up, weirdos? You're listening to the ManicPixieWeirdo. I'm Abigail, your host, and this is the podcast where we talk about all the different kinds of relationships that we have in our lives. And this week we are joined with Jane and Joan, and they are also known as the Therapy Twins. And we are talking about our relationship with trauma and forgiveness. So would you like to go ahead and introduce yourselves? Tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. I'm Joan. This is my twin sister, Jane. We've been nurses since the early 80s, and then I followed her into nursing. Then she became a nurse practitioner and did therapy and meds, and I followed along. She actually told me I couldn't do it. She said, we need different careers. And I said, well, I'm going to go anyway. So I did.
I was following along with what society was telling us.
There you go.
So anyway, we wrote a book because as former therapists, we wanted to come out with our own mental illness, specifically trauma. And, just so we could break the stigma a little bit, because everybody thinks that nobody in the therapy world as the therapist have a trauma. And, it's kind of taboo to talk about it. So anyway, we did that, come out with our own, and then a few tidbits on what helped us get better.
And we made sure the self-help book was ADHD friendly, because I don't know about you, but I would throw a book away. Mm-hmm. If a self-help book came across long-winded and boring, where I wouldn't even understand what I was supposed to do, I would chuck it.
And so how about an assignment more than like one sentence?
No. Okay.
Can't do it.
So, and the stigma is within the field too. We just want to say that we, other therapists as well as social workers, psychologists, that we can't help it. We're human. There is a stigma, and you always have to be in check with that. Okay.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting. I didn't know that there was a stigma like within the field itself.
Not only with us maybe coming out and having a mental illness, but
that was frowned upon.
There's a lot of people don't know this. And one of the reasons why you should always have supervision with a colleague or someone else is that we can, because we're human, judge the client. And when you find yourself overly liking, overly disliking, judging in some way, you got to step back and get some help, because it can be so traumatizing to a patient when 10 years later they remember their therapist said something, and it's kind of upsetting. And the therapist, probably can't remember that they even said it.
Oh, I remember what the therapist said to me.
Oh, what was it?
She said something like, if you weren't hanging around in video stores looking at young men, maybe your marriage would have worked. I left her at that. I left her. Yeah. I thought that was judgmental.
Goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds very judgmental and almost to a certain extent, like blaming.
Yes.
Very blaming.
Yeah. Huh? Yeah. Ooh.
So
anywho.
Well, I do love that you said about the book that it is ADHD friendly, because I have both me and my husband have the ADD to D to Ds. And so that's really important. And I think that's something that we do need to talk about. But I would like to know how, like, just first right off the bat, how did you like get into like specifically the trauma of therapy? Like, do you have any like favorite techniques that you like to use when discussing trauma or dealing with healing trauma?
Yes. And yes. Did you want to start or no? Well, from birth, unfortunately from birth, we didn't know it, but we were being born with trauma. I was born with a brain tumor. Jane and I were both came so early that we had gotten our last rites 2 or 3 times. The nurses named us because my mom didn't even have names for us. Our mom.
We were very premature, and
Oh,
this
we
is
had
in the
lanugo.
60s.
We had hair all over us. Lanugo, it's called when you have hair. So it's like that's a nightmare because we call one of our nieces the hairless bee, and the other one, like she knows how to shave and what to do. So that's always a downer. But anyway, we were born with hair all over us like an animal. And then I had the brain tumor. And then after that, there was just trauma, because why? Didn't know this then. When I became so fear-based and lived within fear and future-oriented, what's going to happen, the anxiety gets to the point where depression has to set in, and vice versa too. When you have depression, people say, where's this anxiety coming from? And then when you get that depression, it gets pretty deep and you feel the world would be best without you, and you become suicidal. So for me, that was crazy. And of course, when I had clients that had gone through trauma, especially worse than myself, would be like, what a relief that someone else, so I really, when Jane said disorder or mental illness, obviously trauma is not a mental illness. It's our reaction to it. Again, it's physiological. I don't actually know why it's in the DSM and why we call it a mental illness.
It's in the DSM because it doesn't go away after time or minimize to the point of being livable. It creeps into almost every part of your life.
Yeah.
Just to sort of answer one of those questions of yours, of course, our ADD, mine is creeping in, but
oh no, it's great.
I found that towards the end of my career, I always assessed for trauma pretty early on because as we were writing our book, and my trauma presented mostly as, well, an anxious kid, but a lot of depression as a grown-up, I thought, because Joan's trauma is classic, she meets the full criteria from the person checking you out at Trader Joe's. I mean, they know how to. Joan is, it's like when you're 9 months pregnant, can't miss that.
No.
And mine was
subtle.
Well, it was just so depressing. And anyway, when I realized I had PTSD, I got a kick out of it because now I'm assessing all these clients that, a couple of them, I used to tease them about, do you have any other traumas? They're like, Jane, don't tell me I have PTSD. I have major depression. I'm like, yeah, a lot of people do, but you might have trauma in there.
Oh, and that's why it's in the DSM, because it causes anxiety, depression, insomnia. It can even cause ADHD symptoms.
Absolutely.
Because all we're doing is reacting, or in Jane's case, like a sloth, not reacting at all. And
I'm the dissociative one.
It's very interesting when you see, because if somebody's violent and angry, obviously that's the aggressive type. So it's easy to identify. Yeah. But boy, hang out with that for a while. And it took me for a while. They're like, does she ever answer you?
No.
No. Like, where is she?
Yeah.
Sitting right there.
one of the another reason I got help back in the day was my son was about 3 or 4 years old. He was running around and he ran and grabbed my knees and said, and he used to call me Jane back then. And he said, Jane, did you hear anything I said? And the answer was, I did not. But of course I said, of course I did, sweetie, but can you tell me again?
Yeah.
And then one of the go-tos with trauma patients that I found was kind of helpful and very doable for them. And I'm not saying when, somebody had an abusive, they were in an abusive relationship, you're not going to work on it when your girlfriend or your boyfriend comes home and starts getting in your face and screaming. But one of the things to kind of help people prepare to not sort of go in that dissociating world and living in that moment. And I know this sounds cliche because everyone says live in the moment, but to kind of practice, like, I talk about how, you go from New Haven to Hartford and you're surprised you didn't get into an accident because you didn't really notice all these exits. And, when we're familiar with something, we can zone out cooking, cleaning, etc. But I would sort of ask patients to describe it as they're doing it next time, even if it's for 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. I'm picking up my broom and I'm going over to the bedroom and I'm going to sweep under the dresser, those kinds of things. Practicing staying in the moment.
And that actually helps with anxiety.
Yes,
if
it does.
If you have to speak in front of the room, you're supposed to, in your head, describe the other person and what they're wearing and stuff like that.
Joan has
Yeah.
a degree as well in forensic science, and
Which I don't remember.
She'll talk about a very funny time she and a couple of colleagues were working on the crime scene,
Mhm.
and there was something about footprints.
Oh, I found the footprint. I was positive that's the perpetrator. I got it. It was my footprint.
Oh,
Talk about ego. Oh my God, it was mine. Yeah. It's a mine.
oh my goodness, that's so funny. Whoops, I would do the same thing. I would totally do the same thing. I think that it's really important to talk about like the suicidal and the depression part of it too, because
Mhm.
like I suffer from anxiety, severe anxiety, trauma, depression. I mean, you name it, all the things. I have all of them. And I remember feeling very much like when you're in that depressive state, like I just want to go to sleep and not wake up.
Yeah.
And that, but then there's a lot of anxiety around that too.
Mhm.
And I found myself going, okay, yeah, but even if I did do that, like the fear of even like not knowing what happens after that. And then
I know.
and then it cycles and cycles and cycles and
Yeah.
cycles in your head. And it just becomes like this perpetual thing. And one of the things that I learned while I was in treatment for all of the many things that I have struggled with in my life was I was introduced to EMDR. And
Wonderful.
especially because I didn't know that trauma can like house itself physically in the body. And that's one
Right.
of the reasons why I had like aches and pains and tremors and just like, and that lethargic feeling when I got really depressed, just that like, I don't want to do anything, but I also like, I know I need to do stuff, but I have no energy to do it. And like the meditative part of it, I was introduced to DBT. And
Oh, wonderful again.
I love it. Do you have any experience? Because that part
Jane
of the
used to
meditation.
Run a DBT group.
Now, you know what? Joan is too kind. I did work as a clinician in a dual diagnosis day hospital, and I didn't get the full training. I called myself a substitute teacher for DBT. And so I then started doing some on my own. It was wonderful.
It was
Wonderful.
the Institute of Living. It's a famous hospital. I worked
Yes.
there as an RN when I was there. Yeah. I used to call it the Institute of Living Hell. Forgive me. I really did. Cause I worked the overnight shift. Actually, it was 7P to 7A. How they expect a human to do that. I swear I used to just hang myself on the couch just so I would be sitting up, because it was awful.
Oh yeah,
Anywho,
well, you become a
one of the-
nocturnal animal. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. But can I just say with PTSD, I try to tell people yes, you're reacting. No, the count. Jane used to say, can't you count to 10? No, I actually can't count to 10 when I want to react.
That was your ex-husband who told both of us to count to 10 before we speak.
Yeah. Anyway, it is a physical thing. And because it is living in our body, your body is remembering. So when people say like, oh, why would I ever have a panic attack in the shower? I don't know, but you either smelled something, touched something, your brain is remembering what you went through. And then we live in it again. So I feel sorry for my body, actually. The adrenaline is causing so much terrible damage. I thought cortisol, but I just learned at 60, that cortisol is low in PTSD patients. I thought it would have been high. And what I read was cortisol comes in at the end. So say you're having a panic attack, it's going to end. With PTSD, it doesn't end. So what happens is the cortisol never quite comes in to let your body know, hey, relax. You're not living in the jungle. The tiger's not waiting over there to kill you, or the man, whoever it is, one or the other.
I
Right.
think what happens is it finally shows up when you're trying to be in a resting state.
Yeah.
And then you don't sleep at all.
And that's very dangerous because with insomnia, nothing really helped. I mean, but I have a tip. I would have to take a pharmaceutical med just to sleep, but it kept me asleep for at least 3 hours. So because I was dead against positive affirmations, because I was very funny and I degraded myself with humor, I didn't want to lose my humor. I used to have people laughing out loud. And I thought, well, that's wonderful. But yeah, instead, what I did was I would encourage people, listen to some sort of positive thing at night when you go to bed. Because otherwise, when you wake up, that fear is instant again. That anxiety, anger, hatred, whatever.
Absolutely.
It's ugly, but it's there.
To go back just for a drop.
Okay.
To DBT was one of the things I really respected about that job I had was the PTSD intensive outpatient program. They made sure that patients worked in, it was the PTSD outpatient. They made sure everyone had a class in DBT before they started their group and individual work, because we all know the body remembers. And if you start talking about something and then people wonder why they leave therapy in a bad mood, or they go home and they're a wreck. Because
or drop out of the group because they live it again.
Because if you actually learn how to regulate some of these emotions that can be very exaggerated, right, and prolonged, then you're more likely to be able to, get from step A to step B.
Or P.
Or P,
or
either
X,
one.
Y, or Z, right?
for peace. Because that's what we're really looking for.
Yes.
Not necessarily happiness.
Yep. Yeah.
Peace.
Jane always says we're looking for peace.
Oh yeah, the peace. Well, and like you said, counting to 10, that never worked for me. And the insomnia, I always had, like, it was not just the problem getting to sleep. It was the problem staying asleep. It was both. And
Terrible.
and I've been on, it feels like sometimes I've been on every medication under the sun. And obviously that's not true, but it feels like over the course of time, I just very recently got on to a very low dose of a medication called Vraylar. And my body's getting used to it and I like it. But the thing about medication is that it's not a happy pill. It's not.
I know.
And I think that there is a stigma, or not necessarily a stigma, but like a misinformation of like, if you take this medication, then like it's going to make you happy and everything's going to be better and everything's going to go away. Whereas like for me, the reality is that it just sort of takes the edge off, but I still have panic attacks and I still have to do that DBT meditative where I like, when I'm washing the dishes, I have to be like, is the water warm? Is it cold? Is it, are there bubbles? And so I think that it's really important to talk about those things, because I don't want people to think that like, oh, well, I'm just going to get on this medication and I'm going to be, happy in 7 days. That's no. That's not how that works. And we still have to do like the talk therapy, and we still have to do that constant work on ourselves, because, being human is by nature being imperfect. And so we're a work in progress and we've got to do that. But a big part of being a work in progress is like forgiving yourself. And I don't know, what are your biggest, I guess not fears, but like your biggest obstacles with like working with people to help people forgive themselves? Because I struggle with that all the time, just like little bitty things. Do you have any like tips for that, or what's your experience with that?
Go ahead.
I think that, with you saying the word imperfect, I think that we probably should be taught that from a very, very young age, because we're in the day and age of everybody's striving to be better than the next guy or very good at what we do. And we forget that we are flawed human beings and we can't be perfect all the time. We're not robots. And so, for patients, obviously they have to vent and you want to work with forgiveness of others, forgiveness of self. And both are really difficult, I found, for patients as well as myself. One of the things Joan mentioned, peace. One of the ways that helped me to at least start the process was I wanted peace in my life. I found that being, intolerant, not compassionate, unforgiving, I guess another word for chronic anger, right? Or some self-loathing and all of that. I wasn't getting better. The pill would help me to a point. I would do some work on my own. It would help me to a point. But I knew I had to forgive. And so for me to start, I thought, let me start with others. Patients seem to have a easier time with that as well. Some patients.
Yeah. And some people don't want to forgive another person.
Some people, it's to forgive is doesn't.
To pretend. They think if you forgive, it never happened.
Yeah, you're going to pretend
Or-
that the person
Or you're
wasn't
saying it's okay. And
Yeah.
it wasn't.
those things.
Forgiveness was extremely hard for me, not of myself. I mean, my cousin used to say I would date a serial killer before I dated somebody who ate meat because I'm vegan. But I mean, I do have the stainless steel, and anything I did, I used to like call my exes. Maybe because I slept with them, they were on my side at the point, but they always validated, oh yeah, no, Joan, she was a bitch. You're right. And that was so negative of me to do that. I kept like patting myself. Yep, it was them, not me. And then when I realized that in order to change another person, including myself, I was the only one who had to change. That was huge for me. I think you told me I didn't want advice from Jane like a son doesn't want advice from their mother. I just didn't want it from Jane. I wanted it from someone else. But Jane tricked me. What she said was, well, Joan, can you say you love yourself? And I didn't like the word love. And I said, no, I don't want that. So she said, well, how about the door to my heart opens inward? And I thought, I could say that. That's excellent. I'm not using the word love. I'm not being conceited. I'm opening the door and it opens inward. So I must love myself. Well, after a month, she told me, how you doing? I said, oh, good. I say it. It's written in the bathroom and the bedroom. I see it. I say it. It's on my foot. Like sometimes I used to tape it to my boot. She said, well, it doesn't mean you love yourself. And I was like, you bitch, what does it mean? Go ahead. Tell her what it meant.
It meant forgiveness of everyone. I think it did include yourself, and it was for
it meant I forgive. Yeah,
wrongs.
I forgive everyone, including myself, for all perceived wrongs. I would not have said that. I would not have.
I did not come up with that.
Oh,
That
yeah.
is directly from a Louise Hay self-help book.
It was a self-help book
affirmation book.
that our older sister used to love her. Yeah.
Oh,
I used to throw those books out too until she signed it. My sister Lori gave it to me. And
Because I thought
Louise
that was
signed it.
brilliant to be able to say something that it didn't really mean a lot.
Yeah.
Negative or positive.
Right.
But it had such power to it. And so I thought that was wonderful.
No, it was excellent. She tricked me a couple of times and I got better from both times. So
And then
fool me once. Yes. Fool me twice, please. Please do.
And now, getting back to Joan's other degree
Which
in
was what?
forensic science.
Yeah, that
And
was
then,
hard. That was
we
actually
watch
really
crime
hard.
shows, this, that, and the other. And so one of the things that helped me was, in a country where we have prisons or we have arrests, et cetera.
Yeah.
So you do something, there's a consequence. And very few people get life or
Parole.
no, or
The
the
death
death
penalty.
penalty. I mean, right? Very
Where
few.
are you going with this?
And where I'm going with it is my perceived, let's use that, wrongs. Let's take our father. I had a 10-year hatred toward him, approximately. And so I got myself thinking, for what he did, what should his sentence be? Clearly, it wasn't death. It wasn't life. I thought, geez, for 10 years, I think he might have had enough now. So one of the things I started doing, because how do you forgive all, like that, is another self-help book talked about, it could have been Louise Hay, in Assistance with Forgiveness, is to, for example, view your father as a little boy and what did he go through? And, in our dad's age, severe abuse seemed like normal parenting. We heard of a lot of young boys
being
getting
thrown down the stairs.
thrown down the cellar
lot.
stairs,
That day and age. Yeah.
And so every generation has their gig. And so I one of the things, he grew up in poverty. So the big thing I couldn't stand about our father was, I'm trying to learn how to pour a gallon of milk.
Which we don't drink anymore.
We don't drink anymore.
Because we're vegan.
And I continually spilled the milk. And the day I spilled the whole gallon, we were around an octagon kitchen table with some nice large chairs. And I saw the look. I saw him. He saw me.
He had severe PTSD.
He had
but that look, you knew
right?
0
You
to
knew
60
he was coming after
was
you.
now.
And the worst he ever did to us was spank us. There was no throwing down the stairs, right? Anyway, he's chasing me around the kitchen table, and long story short, I pull a couple of chairs out after my third run around the table to slow him down. And then I go lock the bedroom door and it's over with. And so one of the things I thought after I was thinking, I was like, my God, he grew up in poverty.
Yeah.
I'm so egocentric. I'm thinking I would like to learn how to pour milk. And why would you ever hit a child? Because they're right. But he saw dollar bills going down the drain. And for me, I thought, my goodness, 10 years was a little too long for that. But it was really, you can get as creative as you want and in detail as you want. And you don't even have to involve the other human, which was the most fun for me. I didn't have to do, Dad, when you chased me around the table, I felt blank. I didn't have to go through that. I used some comedy instead, and it was very helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love comedy. I'm like you, Joan. I do enjoy that part about me. It kind of can be kind of self-deprecating, but I like that part about me, so I don't really want to change that,
No. Wonderful.
But I do think, like, for me, I believe forgiveness isn't necessarily for the other person, it's for myself. And the reason that I say that is because I have no control over what anybody else does. I don't get to tell them whether or not, they forgive me or,
Right.
any of those things. All I can do is say, I'm asking for your forgiveness, and I'm also forgiving you for what I perceived. Like you said, I think that's a really good word too.
Yeah.
Perceived as a discretion in my life. And the reason that I reacted the way that I did was because I perceived it in a certain way. And so I'm sorry for that. And I forgive you, because it is kind of a selfish way of looking at forgiveness. But it's helped me in my life.
Yep.
And I just think that it's really important to talk about forgiveness, because especially when it's based around trauma, because that is one of the big, it's trauma, and it comes in many forms. And I really don't like it when people try to quantify like their pain. I don't enjoy that, because I'm like, I can't tell you that paper cut on your finger doesn't sting like hell. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And if that is trauma for you, then who am I? I'm not a divine entity. I'm not God. I don't have that power to be like, nope, you're being a baby about it. And so, and because trauma is so different for everybody, it really does need to be individualized.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
Absolutely.
Can you expand?
Yes, because, just between the two of us having it, I used to try to tell people, think of an animal. If you live outside over there, wherever that is, they're living as surviving. That is the definition of PTSD, is you're no longer living. You're actually surviving. And think of a snake, because would a snake, want to have a big party right now and relax? No. Does a snake want to kill you and ask questions later? Sure, after I kick you under the dirt. You think of an animal, but there's also a sloth out there. And a sloth is extremely slow moving, adorable, but has big claws. But it takes forever for that little guy to go move. So first identify what bird, animal, bug you feel that you're acting like. Then forgive yourself, because it's not shameful to scream at something or break it, and then you're sweeping up the pieces, because the tiger would have done that too. The tiger doesn't say, oh dear, you're going to have time out. If you do something out there and you could die, the tiger just gave you the backhand to the cub. That wasn't abuse. That's so you can live. So first I always try to identify with what animal I'm acting like. And then I never had EMDR, unfortunately. I adopted CBT eventually in a humorous way. And I used to paste the Post-its all over my body. People would go, bad day, Joan? Yeah, it was a bad day. And I'm trying to rectify that. So, the door to my heart opens inward. I forgive everyone. Helping others. What was the question? Because I have no idea. One of the things I wanted, because you said so many wonderful things.
Yeah, you did.
One of the things I wanted to mention was, everybody is on this journey at their own pace.
Yeah.
And I actually thought Joan was going that way with the animals, but I thought it was wonderful where you went with it, because I think that I was the sloth in terms of forgiving, actually myself, because I was able to, it took me years as a sloth to start forgiving others, but then I was really slow at forgiving myself. And I think that people need to be kind to themselves about that, because not everyone can have a PhD when they get out of kindergarten. And why would we want that? And life would be so boring, it might not be worth living. And we can learn from each other, and from when, patients used to inspire me when they would come up with something. And one of the things I noticed in my career was the people that didn't require long-term therapy, talking about, everything's all about ourselves even when we're getting better, it has to be. So anyway, people who had very strong faith, but I've had clients with very strong faith that were as slow as me. And I didn't have strong faith, but I had some. But they had faith, and the way they explained it, I mean, you thought you were talking to the next, Martin Luther King, the way they spoke, you could tell that they were, let's call them old souls, or just people that were better adjusted than I was. One guy, I told him, if you don't go to divinity school, like, I want to discharge you. That's how I could hear. If you talk the Bible to me, I don't want to hear it. And if you talk Jesus, Jesus was a nice guy. I don't mean to say anything bad about Jesus, because I think we're all sons and daughters of God. And what I don't like is the hierarchy. Again, you're better than me. That competitiveness, even after death, that could never be something I would be interested in. And speaking of everyone has something to bring to the table when your plane crashes. You're all there. And even somebody like whoever you think is the worst of society, he or she has something to bring. And that's why we're going to survive together. Okay. What was your point now?
I love it. Well, because I believe that.
Sorry.
No, it's great, because I believe the same thing too. I believe that we all have the capacity within us to be divine, but we have to help each other. That's why we're kind of all still here, and we have to help. And that's one of the big goals of my podcast, is to inspire unity and inspire people to come together using understanding, compassion, and empathy. And I really like that what you said, because I'm pretty much the same way. I would be considered non-denominational. I don't I don't believe in one specific religion. I don't believe anybody's right. I don't believe anybody's wrong. I believe that we all have we all have our own ideas, and whatever way works for you, great. As long as it works for you and you're happy, I'm cool with that. Just don't try to shove it down my fucking throat.
And don't take my home over it. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Yeah. And don't
maybe push me, shove me, or rape me. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
But other than that.
And maybe don't kill people, maybe don't do that either. But I really love that idea of, we're all coming together, but we all have to help each other. We do have to, we're in this together. We're all, whether we like it or not, we're all in this together.
Yeah.
Including the animals and, nature and everything. Yep. I'm really jealous. Y'all are vegans. I tried to be vegetarian, but I need iron. I'm really anemic, and I ended up in the hospital. I think I did it wrong, but I'm trying. I'm working on it.
For the record, I'm only primarily vegan, and because I have cheated, I don't cheat on animals anymore, but it doesn't matter. I'm primarily plant-based is what I say, because I'm never giving up local organic honey if it's done with a regular beekeeper. But none of us are vegan because we drive vehicles, and apparently there's 2 tires that are vegan. So I hate when I had a vegan page, and some people got mean when I had a faux fur scarf, and they yelled at me. And it was like, oh my God, get over yourself, please.
We have bigger problems to solve, guys.
But speaking of helping others, and I think we live in such a, we're in a very much egocentric society. Yeah. I mean, we're the United States, so of course we're the best. So we're the bully on the playground, and it just trickles down from there. And we know, coming from a psych background, that group therapy is one of the best ways to support change.
Is it really? I didn't know that.
Absolutely. And wouldn't you know, with the insurance companies, it's kind of difficult to get that going. But without a community, we've sort of left a lot of people with this thing called mental illness to fight all of it alone. And the most a lot of us can get is individual therapy and meds, and then you got to do it on your own. And it's really, really difficult. And I think
I want to
Joan-
liken it to an animal
Okay.
again.
There you
Yes.
go.
When
Yes.
I don't know what a gazelle is or a moose, but let's say the tiger or lion is running after the herd. He gets one of them, but
The zebra, Joan. He got
zebra.
the zebra.
Okay, he got the
How about that?
zebra, but he didn't kill her because the other ones, the zebras, got him off of her. So let's think of ourselves as the zebra. We go home after my traumas, and I was in an incubator by myself for a month, but then I'm left in my own crib, not even with hers, and then we couldn't be in the same class. The zebra, on the other hand, gets to go home to the herd. The entire herd helps the zebra, not just one person,
Right.
one zebra, because one zebra can't do it all. Maybe that zebra taught CBT, but not DBT. But anyway, that zebra gets, and all the religions, life religious, all of them. And that zebra gets coddled because they're allowed. We don't like that in society. You regressed, stand up, pull your pants up, do it, just do it.
Yeah.
And I get it. We should be doing things, but we weren't coddled with the entire tribe. That's how they get over their PTSD on a daily basis. That helping each other.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think, nature would have dissipated.
Because otherwise, nature, if nature acted like us, there
Oh.
wouldn't be that. They wouldn't be there anymore outside.
Oh yeah, it
Yeah.
would be dead. I mean,
Yeah.
very much so.
So
I-
competitive sports are fun, but we are a cooperative species. And that's what we're supposed to do.
Right. I
But-
like to say, you mentioned like the United States, we have, insane, statistics about like suicide and depression and mental health rates. And it's just all through the roof. And it's like, that's because there's all of these different things. And we as a country have suffered traumas. And, but if you want to bring in the entire species of the human race, I mean, just what we've done to each other is, we've got to heal from it. Specifically in the United States, I kind of sometimes like to say that, we're terminally unique. We live in a country full of people who are terminally unique. And another one of my goals with this podcast is to show people that you're not the only one. You're really not the only one. I promise you, you're not alone. There are 8 billion people on this planet. So statistically speaking, the chances that you're the only one suffering from this are very
Right.
slim. And, let's unify together. Let's talk
Yeah.
about these things. Let's talk about our relationships with these things because they are important and we need to start
Mhm.
healing, not
Yeah.
just as a country, but as a species,
Right.
And
Do you know how many people would get offended by that if we sort of too quickly or too soon said you're not that unique? And even if we said it in the most loving, supportive way. And I want to say, even myself, I knew what Joan went through, which was the most horrific thing most of us could imagine.
right.
But
Aw.
for some reason, what I was going through, I had a little bit too much ego, I think. I wasn't ready. I wouldn't let things go that was mine to hold on to. And unfortunately, it was in one of those 10 commandments that I could name 4 of. I won't even name them, but
Putting that alone, those 10 things people are going to judge themselves and feel horrible about,
Yes.
how many paper clips did you take from work? A lot. And stuff, steal. Let's not go there because I'll just say that
Yeah.
murder and stealing is on the same page as well.
no, I mean, because like stealing 2 paper
But if
clips versus 2,000 paper clips, people are going to judge the ratings, the severities
Yeah.
of. So anyway, what's really nice is when you get into a group where everybody comes to the table with something, but what you can hear from, Ralph across the hallway versus what you can hear from Betty over here. It's just amazing how if we would only listen to each
Yeah.
other and not so quickly judge.
And if we
Yes.
don't open up our hearts and heal, we have hate in our heart, including myself. Like I was hateful. And then I hear that my vibration as a human being is contributing to the hate everywhere else. And I thought, are you kidding me? So if I'm being hateful, there's bombs going off on another. And so I try to be mindful of that. I really do
Yes.
try. And you have to be mindful every day because even today I could have said, something negative in my mind about Jane or the cat.
Again, though, we're human and we have to forgive
Yes.
ourselves for even those little things. I catch myself all the time and I go, maybe I shouldn't have said that or done that. But
Mhm.
you kind of have to just move on. You kind of have to, you have to, address it and then acknowledge it and then forgive yourself and then keep going, because we've got to keep going. We've got to get some sort of change happening. We are so broken as a species. And I think it's so important to talk about. What are your like favorite ways that you work with yourself and with patients to like forgive yourself and sort of address the trauma and then learn how to forgive yourself?
Okay. One of my favorite things is, so yeah, people, they need to vent, and they need to vent, 10 or 1,000 times. And then when you see the opening, and everybody's different, where you can help them change, let's call it perception, because we were talking about perceived wrongs. But I'd like to jump to the thing that I did with myself. And then later I did do it with patients, and the ones that could hear it is, I had a Reiki session, and I only did it because I was interested in what is Reiki. I didn't want to be a Reiki master, but it was an energy healing, and I was looking for ways to refer patients to other types of healing. So I thought, let me try it out. And what comes out of this Reiki session is, could I begin viewing someone through compassionate eyes? I thought that was brilliant, because I hadn't considered such a thing, of course, right? Or I hadn't considered it like that. And it was for Joan. Joan and I were fighting because two people with, what's worse than one person with PTSD is two people trying to kind of get along. Anyway,
Very reactive.
So anyway,
yeah.
so here it was, we were both sort of, can't you do this? Or why would you do that? Or I can't believe you did that. And could you just blah,
escalated to
right?
screaming.
And no one's backing down, because
No,
we're from
right.
the United States, and my ego's as big as the flag. So now I start
Mind you.
practicing. I can't do it every day, right? But every once in a while, I thought, okay, view Joan through compassionate eyes, meaning I'm not going to correct her. I'm not going to storm. I'm not going to do this. Roll my eyes like she's dumber than a stump and I'm brilliant, or something. I'm not going to do any of that. And so what I noticed, because of course it didn't work right away, was when I changed how I spoke to her, or how I reacted to her, I saw all of a sudden she started changing. So like the nice Joan starts coming out again. And what I realized once again was, oh, I really am that angry and bitter and blah, blah, blah. So
And it's hard at first. I remember a client having a fight with her boyfriend, and we would go over it in a session, but then she texted, "It's happening now, please help." So she sent what he said. Then I texted to her what she was going to say. At first she was like, "No way." But like Jane said, if you change, because the good thing is everything negative in this world was because of our behavior, all of us,
or our thoughts.
And the good thing about that is it can change. It's us that we don't want to. We resist change because it's scary.
Or we always want the other guy to change.
Well, it's hard.
Of course.
It's hard.
And that's why you would never, that's why people who are abused and they go back to the abuser, people judge them. Hey, that's what they're familiar with. If they grew up with the wire monkey, they're going to have some feeling when a wire monkey, whatever, when a hanger hugs them. I'm going to bed tonight with hangers. So there. Oh, the other thing with healing,
not to beat you up.
Yeah, the other thing with healing is I try to tell people what I did was I spited myself. It's like, oh, you do that, then I'm going to leave the holiday, or I get kicked out of the restaurant. Well, there you go. I didn't get my meal. And I kept spiting myself. And I thought, what is wrong with you? The worst I ever heard, that poor girl, in my mind, I was like, oh, yours was worse than mine. Every time she had a fight with her family member, she went and gave blowjobs. And it's like, wow, that's how much we spite ourselves just not to back down.
Right.
It's actually insanity.
Because I used to smoke cigarettes and I used to drink probably too much alcohol, but I don't anymore. And the cigarettes was to treat my anxiety when I'd have a fight with someone. And the alcohol was when I had enough of this world. I needed to go to bed. Sometimes I could have large coffee, light and sweet, and an hour later be in bed for 10 hours as well. But, you know, something to kind of just numb myself.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
And one of the other things that's a wonderful tidbit to try to get people to practice, and even if it's for fun at first, is what's the motivation behind your behavior, or what's the motivation behind what you're about to say to someone. Yes. And when it is a negative emotion or too egotistical, like, for example, my son once told me, I thought, I wish I came up with this, but he did. And he once told me that what he was currently practicing was to not point out that somebody was wrong. Because I was like, the motivation behind my behavior this morning was I wanted to tell Joan she was wrong because she came at me with, not at me in a nasty way, but the way I soaked some plastic that had coffee grounds in it. And so she said, oh, cold water works better.
Oh, I know what she's talking about. Yeah.
And so in my head, I'm like, all right, you know what? I wanted to say something like, yeah, but you put that in the dishwasher, Joan, you know, yesterday, and there'd be hot water in the dishwasher. But no, I didn't say it because I practiced asking myself, what was my motivation?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Motivation is very important, I think. And like, what is your goal here? Like, what's the end goal of, you know, kind of my mom has a really great saying, so I'm going to borrow it from her. Borrowing without asking and have no intention of return. But, is it helpful? Is it hurtful? Is it kind? Is it necessary? That's kind of her, like, it's not really a mantra, but it's kind of her just like little way, like if she's like in the heat of the moment kind of thing, she has to like stop. And those are the questions she asks herself. And I use it a lot too, because it really does. It kind of goes back to the mindfulness thing where it slows me down because I have to answer those questions. And if I get to the end of those questions and all of them are no, then I probably shouldn't say it, you know?
Right. But I think at my worst, I might have said that it was necessary, and it wasn't.
Yep.
Right.
You would have said it was necessary and said probably necessary to get it off your chest too. I get a kick out of that when somebody thinks that expressing themselves, you have to be able to express yourself. My doctor told me, or my therapist told me I should express myself, and how they express it is they just tear you to absolute shreds, and they never really acknowledge anything. You know, like, this is the worst restaurant I've ever been at. I can't believe you picked this restaurant when it was really, you know, the brand new son-in-law taking the older lady out. You know, you don't have to say that.
Then I think what I like is I used to look definitions of words up because I had such a problem with the word love. I felt people overused it like water. And I thought, well, does it even mean anything? So again, I became negative with that word. But what I did was, what did I do?
Did you make your own? I made my own.
No, I looked up the word respect. And respect had three interesting, I can't find it anymore. So I wonder what dictionary I was looking at. One was paying attention to and paying attention or time and consideration, something like that. One was recognizing the worth of every individual. But this one was refrain from interfering. And I thought, I love that, because going back to what you said, as long as that person is thinking or saying or doing something and it's not harming people or an animal, then why can't they be that way? Why would I interfere because they're not as much like me? Is that like, where does that go? That must be ego too, where people congregate. That's very adolescent. You congregate, you learn your little niche there. Yeah, we're acting like adolescents. There you go.
I think we're acting younger than that.
I have a theory that like the human race is only, like, collectively as a species, we're only like 6 years old. I don't know if that's true, but I do that all the time though. I found that when I look up definitions, like, cause I had big issues with like the word love too, very big issues with, and then everybody had a different.
She's my twin, not you.
I'm honored. But I had, and then I figured out that like everybody had a different definition, and I didn't really know if I never really latched on. So I was like, well, if everybody else is making up their own definition, then I'm going to make up my own too. And so my definition of love is an experience. It is a virtuous matter of the heart that cannot be described fully through words, only expressed through action. So that's like my personal definition of love. And I tried to make it all encompassing, like including as inclusive as possible. Are there any other words that you like didn't have a good relationship with, or like just didn't like? Because like happiness was another one for me, where I'm still struggling with like, what does that mean for me?
Well, how about the sentence? Happiness is a journey. I'm like, come on, where is that? Like, I don't know where you go.
I have one of those wooden plaques with some iron letters on
Joy.
it. It says
Joy,
and I have it above my television. And one day Joan was sitting in my living room and she said something. I don't even know what
I think I said that bugs me.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't even stand looking at the word. It's huge. Joy. I thought it was mocking.
Well,
me.
I get that too.
So I needed it in my face.
Yeah.
I needed joy. I didn't have it.
What helps people, I call myself primitive sometimes, because what helps me is certain movies I caught onto a few things. One, the father dies and the little boy is devastated and he has a dream. His father's alive. They're in a canoe and the little boy says, how's heaven? And the father says, pretty good. And the little boy says, good. I want to come with you. I'm going to kill myself. And the father went, wait. He said, son, you'll come someday. But there is nothing like the planet Earth. He said, you get to the 5 senses, touch, feel, smell. What are they? Taste. That. Yeah. So what I do if I'm slipping, which is throughout the day, I might be slipping into angry, irritable, anxious, sadness, suppression, whatever. I either go touch the flowers. I have cactus flowers over here. I would smell. I have a really good, I'm blessed with a really good sense of smell. Actually, it's a curse sometimes, but there's certain things like if you smell rosemary, it actually gives you a little bit more alertness. So I do like to do my 5 senses. And I don't know. That's about all I had to say.
Well, how did you work out? How'd you work out not liking joy?
What's the definition of that? I don't know what the definition of joy is. I have to look it up. I've been saying the word wonderful a lot because I thought it was a positive word. It wasn't overdone like excellent or awesome. So I've been saying it a lot and I like it. People think that that I overuse it, but I love it. I don't say F anymore. F-U-C-K.
Well, Joan and I,
yes,
we're,
I do.
We're 60 years old and we have been honored to have met a handful of people who escaped the world of therapy and maybe some of these diagnoses, but I believe some of them may have trauma anyway, but their outlook on life.
Yeah.
And you know who I'm thinking of.
Lori?
Audrey.
Oh, Audrey.
I hope Audrey sees it some days. Audrey can have devastating things going on in her life. She happened to be our mom's best friend and we spoke with her recently. And she caught us up on some of the things that were going on in her family. And yet what kept coming through the phone call was, but things are good. I don't want to spend too much time on that. Things are really wonderful.
Right.
And so she's an inspiration as well as there's some other people too. Alice is one, Joan.
Yeah.
A's. Abigail, I wonder if ours is Audrey and Alice have this tendency to
Adam, your son.
Oh my gosh, to see things, even when they're devastated about something, through those wonderful eyes of happy, joy, compassion, forgiving. And so I think those are the people in life that we, if you want to be happier, observe what they do. Heck, ask them questions,
Yeah.
Because we have no hesitation to go to, say, our best high school teacher to ask a question about something because we respect their opinion. I respect the opinion of happy people. I really do.
Well,
because I used to think I was right. Well, clearly I was wrong.
Oh, I always thought I was right. Sometimes
Me
I
too.
was.
Me too.
And if you talk to your exes, sometimes they'll tell you that too. But I want to say that some people will hear that and say, well, what if I'm incarcerated? What if I'm in an abusive relationship and can't escape? What if I was in a concentration camp right now? Well, there are a couple of things we learned that if you chew your food painstakingly slow, it stimulates your saliva, which then goes to the which gland?
Wait 1 second. It's
Something-
not just chewing your food.
Oh yeah, you want to smell
You
it.
want to use your senses,
Mhm.
smelling it, looking at it, the beauty of it, sharing it. They did a study with a concentration camp, the Holocaust survivors. And these were people that did not have
The
enough.
Jewish Holocaust.
The
'cause
Jewish
there have
Holocaust.
been others.
There were people that did not die when they should
Yeah.
have. And then obviously there were people that
Right.
died as well.
of starvation.
Of
But what did it
starvation.
stimulate?
And what
You
they
chew-
found was the people, they took the food and they savored it. They used all their senses. And if there was another, like a child with them, or I don't,
Jane, get to
and
the
so what
saliva.
happened is the saliva, I don't know if it was the saliva, chewing will stimulate the pineal gland or
Pineal.
pineal gland,
That.
which
Ooh.
boosts the immune system
Yes.
as well as other things.
Yeah, and it actually has something to do with rising up against things that you don't like. And if your pineal gland is going to be stimulated, I imagine you're going to become
Mhm.
stronger emotionally as well.
So it was an
Oh.
Yeah.
example of mindfulness.
Yeah.
If you think about it, that could have been an example of being mindful, taking this clementine and smelling it and observing the brilliant orange and how the sun is reflecting. And then, doing the
Right.
entire motion of being super mindful. See?
Yeah.
Smelling
Smelling
We're
it.
going to
Love
say
it.
that DBT boosts the immune system at this point. Someone will prove that down the road. They
Right.
will.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. So this question has been burning, and you brought up animals. I love animals. What animal do you each identify with the most? And like
Ugh,
right now, what is your animal that you are embodying?
Oh, unfortunately, that saber-toothed tiger, that killing machine tiger, but we're Leos as well.
So I'm
So
always
I
a cat.
totally identify with the lion and tiger
Yeah.
kingdom, or a cat, not a dog at all. I don't identify with the little guy, the dog. They're so nice.
I'm a
too.
Taurus, so I'm
I
very
love the
stubborn.
bull.
I'm very
love it.
stubborn.
Is Taurus a bull?
Taurus
Yes.
is the bull. The bull is wonderful.
Yeah, because bullfighting has to stop, because the bull
Yeah.
would really win if you played the fair fight.
Right.
Mhm.
And I totally could sleep if I didn't have, I say for, a lot of times my son having a child, and I was a single mom, kind of helped me get out of bed, but I could have been like a cat and slept 18 to 20 hours a day just to not have to deal.
But I'm striving for something else. So I know I said I didn't identify with the dog, but during my symptomatic days that were so horrible, no one liked me. Everyone was breaking up with me, my family. And I thought, really? Could it possibly be me? Like, really? I could be that person? So what I had was a picture of a German Shepherd viciously ready to attack somebody. And that's what I felt like.
Right.
And it was a beautiful thing. I framed it. Then next to her, I framed a dove, and I would go outside my door and go, I know, I get it. I know, like, all right, dove, I'm going to try and act more like you. And that helped a little too. I know it sounds so primitive, but when you suffer a trauma that's violent like that done to you, maybe not motor vehicle accidents that you didn't, that's a different type. But when you have it done to you and you have this anger and revenge, you feel, not validated, like it's okay for me to be this way when it's not.
Yeah.
So
Vindicated.
physically, if I'm living back in the trauma, the reason I screamed, because my poor brother-in-law, he's dead now, had the spoon. He took the spoon from either the clam sauce or a vodka cream sauce, and he put that spoon into the
vegetables or something.
And I acted like that was the worst thing ever. But the more I read about trauma, was because I didn't have the tribe helping me, I went immediately into saber-toothed tiger, where that was a threat to me and like my stomach. And it helped explain my reactions. Obviously, I knew, being a tiger, you can't live in this community. I had to act more like the dove, which I do. I love birds. I do love them. And I don't feed them every day. I feed them in the winter only because my landlord wants to evict me because of feeding the birds, but it's because the squirrels came in the house. Whatever, may all be fed.
Let's all feed each other.
Oh yeah, I feed the cats outside of my house, but I'm pretty sure
I
there's
used to
like a
do that, too.
possum and like other dogs, and it's fine. Whatever.
That's cute.
Everybody's got to eat, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So just to kind of like close it out, what is the most fulfilling part of like your jobs, and what's like some of the more difficult things, and how do you like not necessarily reconcile them, but how do you push through them and get to a place of peace within those job titles, any of the job titles that you've had?
The most fulfilling for me is when people stop coming. I mean, maybe not abruptly after the third time. You might wonder, that wasn't going well. But when they stop coming after you realize, wow, they have had enough help. They know how to utilize the tools. They've thought of some on their own, and they just look more relaxed. That's the most fulfilling. But go ahead. I don't know what else.
No, that's very fulfilling.
Mhm.
To see the change in people. I know for myself, it was the most fulfilling thing for me was when I was able to forgive some of the people that were the closest to me. Because remember, the opposite of love is not hate, it's disinterest. So the people I felt like hate's a strong word, but I had the issues, big issues. The best thing for me, or most fulfilling, was that I was able to, let's just say, I was able to adore and feel love towards both of our parents before they passed. And I know I could have gotten there because I almost didn't make it with our mother. I almost didn't, because I remember at age when she was 80 years old, was the last time I yelled at her. I screamed at her because she remembered events with our older sister, Lori. She remembered events with Joan, my twin. And then I said, Ma, do you remember blah, 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 blah? And she said, no, I don't remember that. I flipped out.
Jean's the forgotten middle.
I'm the forgotten middle child.
Forgotten
Because
middle.
I'm the older twin. It's okay. So anyway, but I made it. I decided when she was 80, I will never yell at her again, like that. And that I was going to work on my forgiveness and misperceived wrongs about our mother. And I made it, because it hurts me to hear.
Yeah.
There's a musician. A musician.
What are you talking about?
I'll think of they're a British band, the brothers. Then there was the fourth brother was on his own. The Bee Gees. The Bee Gees. The Bee Gees. The last living brother, I saw an interview with him, and you could see the water, the tearing in his eyes, ready to go. And he said his biggest regret was that when each of his brothers passed, it was a time when they were having some discord. And I felt it in my heart because, I've had a breakup where I never got to talk to the person ever again. And, it hurts. And especially if they were a friend too, and not just a lover, it breaks my heart to hear that story. But, when you find the spirituality in every human, whether it's the universe, the trees that talk to each other out back, we can work on all of that. But I was so happy that I got to do it, especially with our mother, before she passed. I'm really grateful for that.
I just want to go to like the primitive again, where maybe, because my favorite clients were those who were incarcerated half their lives. And it just was unbelievable to me. So what I want to say is science helped. Not that science is everything, because it certainly isn't, because what the world used to be flat, that was science.
Well, it might be again.
Yeah, I know. So for me, there was a person who said to me, because I was having trouble getting better, and it was actually at a psychic thing. It wasn't a therapist, but she happened to have been a social worker. And she heard what I was saying. And she said, Joan, you do realize that saying positive affirmations, that they're lies at first, right? No, I didn't even connect that. Something as simple as lying to myself. Like if I felt like I was ugly, I was going to say an affirmation, I'm beautiful. But if I feel ugly inside, I won't say that because I don't believe it.
Right.
But if somebody says, but Joan, it's a lie. Can you lie to yourself? Yes, I can do that. That helped me immensely
to the point where I can't tell that person. I don't even remember Loretta, I think her name was. The other thing that helped me, and I tried to pass along to people who are incarcerated, who, have revenge and have already taken revenge and taken lives. What I say to them is, I felt like you. I felt like I had those emotions. You look like me at a party or down the street. I got kicked out of a restaurant. That was me. And what I learned was every time you remember an event in your life, you're remembering it differently. And that's why in forensic science, I did learn too. That's why cops separate you at the scene, because as human beings, we're so influenced by each other.
Right.
So to me, that helped me not be always correct. Maybe I misremembered
because
that.
we're also influenced.
That helped me a lot.
We're influenced by ourselves
Yeah.
when we're depressed, or when we remember something. When, as a anxious person, when I'm anxious remembering something, I remember it this way. When I'm depressed and I'm remembering this situation, I'm remembering it another way. When I'm very bitter and
or when I have insomnia for several days, I may not even know what happened.
Right. Because Joan and I have the best story ever.
Oh.
We were in elementary school, definitely in separate classes. So kindergarten was the only one we were allowed together. So first or second grade, one of us was on the playground. One of us on the playground got bit by a spider, and it kind of blew up like a grapefruit. And because we were twins, our mother had to take us both out of school
and
to
go
the doctor. To the doctor. So we both go to Dr. Boyd. One of us gets treatment and with Benadryl, and that's the end of that. So
we both believed.
I believed it was me, and Joan believed it was her, and I was positive as she was.
And our poor mom didn't remember before she died.
Yeah.
So being validated probably doesn't, like all those years I was validated by my exes, I guess that doesn't move you forward, because I stayed in it. I remember John, my ex, saying, Joan, when did this happen? Because I was so angry about it. And I said, I don't know. And he said, Joan, I think it was the 70s. And I thought, that long ago, you think? He said, aren't you sick of it? And I said, I am absolutely sick of this behavior. He said, because I am. And he was sick of me venting from back in the 70s that things happened in my family.
And when was this, the 80s or 90s?
Oh, it was the 2000s. And something. Yeah, absolutely. I know how to hold on to stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, if you give me a baby in a burning building, I'll hold on to that baby until I'm outside. I will not drop the ball or the baby. You got it.
Okay. Oh, that's so perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to have to ask you to come back at some point. This was so much fun. Oh my goodness. You guys are hilarious. I love it. You're my new favorite therapy twins.
Thank you, twin.
Oh, I'm so honored. If you want to go ahead and tell everybody just one more time what they can find, where they can find you, all of the things, so that we can get this out there for everybody to listen to and hear and read the book that you guys wrote. That's specially geared toward
ADHD friendly book. Absolutely. It is therapytwins1word.com. You even do Therapy Twins and Google us and it'll come up. So it's Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. I don't know where else. And then the book is on Amazon, but it's also on our website, therapytwins.com. Oh, and some of our podcasts are on the website.
And the book is called...
the book. It's actually called something.
From Under the Hood, Therapy Twins Guide to a Smoother Ride.
And it has simple tips in there that helped us, that were simple.
Yeah. Ooh, love it.
And we've shared a few of them already.
Yeah. No, there's some in the book that are
oh
funnier.
My gosh.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to the Therapy Twins. It was such an awesome time. I had a great time. They were fun. I hope they had a good time too. We will bring them back because that was just so much fun. You can reach out if you liked what you heard, or you have an idea for a topic, or you want to talk about your trauma, anything like that. ManicPixieWeirdo@protonmail.com. That's the best way to do it. Or you can DM me on the Instagram, which is the _man_weirdo1. Or the Twitters, at MPWeirdo Podcast. So go check us out over there. That's where I interact the most with people. Would be Twitter and Instagram, and obviously on the email, the podcast email. You can also check us out on Pinterest, the_main_weirdo21. So go check us out. As always, be kind and stay weird, guys. I love y'all. Bye.
Hey, do you have a podcast, or maybe you're just thinking about starting a podcast? Well, I am Chris from Podtastic Audio, and here I show you tips and tricks on how to make your audio sound the best it possibly can with the gear you already have. With 2 years of experience on the Chris and Christine Show, creating the finest audio I possibly can make, I will show you the tips and tricks I have used on that show to make the audio sound fantastic. So if you have any podcast-related questions to your audio, you always can email me at podtasticaudio@gmail.com, like this guy here did. His name is Joe. Joe writes in from the cast. Hey Chris, when we all sit down together to record our episode, our audio is too low and it has a lot of echo in the recording. How do we make our show sound better? Well, Joe, is the microphone you're using rhyme with the name Betty? And is that microphone in the same room with you? I'd start with that stuff first. And for more Podtastic Audio information, you can go to anchor.fm/Podtastic Audio, and you keep on making your amazing podcast.